Greetings, math fans. All right, so this is day 2 of chapter 1, and today's topic is evaluating expressions. So evaluating expressions. So basically what we're doing here, math fans, is you're basically plugging in. That's what evaluate is. Okay, you're going to get an expression, and you're going to plug a value in for the variable, and you're going to simplify it. That's all you're going to do. Okay, so you're basically you're going to plug in and simplify. Okay, that's pretty much what it is, math fans. Okay, I think the key here. So the key is really we're going to use lots of parentheses. Okay, lots of parentheses. So here's my first example. I got a bunch of examples for you guys. So if I said evaluate, I'm not going to write the word out because it takes a long time. So if I said evaluate negative x when x equals negative 8. So basically I'm just taking this value and I'm plugging it into that x. So see, that's why I like to use parentheses, because watch, I'm going to have, wherever I see an x, I'm going to put a parenthesis. So this is it. I have this x right here. I'm going to put a parenthesis. Okay, and then I'm going to put this negative 8 and plug it into there. So I'm going to put that negative 8 in there. And what happens when you have two negatives, a negative and a negative? You get a positive. So the answer to this problem is just 8. Okay, it's really not difficult, but that's all you do. Okay, let me give you another example. It's very similar to that. What happens if I say, here's the expression, negative of a negative x. Okay, and I tell you x equals negative 8. Well, again, you're going to plug that into that negative 8 into here. Now, again, I kind of said the key is to use lots of parentheses. I already have a parenthesis here, so maybe it gets a little confusing. So watch. Again, just try to be logical here. So if I have the negative on the outside, and then a negative here, that's this negative right here, and then I'm going to put a negative 8. I could put another parenthesis, but I don't need to. Okay, so I just literally, in my problem here, let me get rid of this that negative there. I got that, I put that where I have this x here, I literally just put a negative 8 in there. So I have negative, so this is all stuff right here, even this parenthesis, this is all given, and then I just substitute this negative 8. So what is a negative of a negative? That's positive. So it's really this. Oops. And the answer then to this one is negative 8. Okay? Even if you put this in your calculator, you would get the right answer. Okay, but you got it. So here's the deal. If you put this in your calculator, that's what you actually need to do. Wherever you see a variable, you're going to put another set of parentheses. So truly, if I was putting this in my calculator, I would do this, parenthesis, negative, and then I see that x there. I'm going to put a parenthesis there, and I'm going to put a negative 8 in there. I'm going to close parenthesis like that. And if you do that, you will get negative 8. Your calculator is actually pretty smart. You just have to be smart and know how to put it in. Okay? So that's not too bad. All right, let's keep going here. Do a couple more examples. That's actually more of a complicated example, to be honest with you. So if I said, here's your expression, 2x minus 3y, and I said that x equals negative 3 and y equals negative 1. Just use your parentheses, man. 2 parenthesis negative 3 minus 3 parenthesis negative 1, and then multiply it out. So 2 times negative 3. And again, if you want to use your calculator, you are going to type this exactly the way it is there and get your answer. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. So this is what you're going to get. And again, if you use your calculator, it's fine, but remember, they're opposite signs. So it's really, you're really saying 6 minus 3 because they're opposite signs, and that's equal to 3. And what's the sign of the bigger number? It's negative. So the answer to this problem is negative 3. Okay? All right, so let's try another one here. Negative parenthesis x minus 2y, close parenthesis, and x equals negative 2, and y equals 4. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do it by hand. I'm going to show you how to put it in your calculator. So if you do it by hand, you got negative parenthesis, and that's a negative 2 for that x. Now again, I could put a parenthesis around there, but you get a lot of parentheses here, so you kind of pick and choose which you want to put parentheses around. but it's minus 2. And now it's 2y, so I need to put a parenthesis here and put a 4 here and close that parenthesis. So if you guys remember PEMDAS, okay, you really do everything inside the parenthesis first. So I'll do everything inside of here first, and then I'll actually put the negative on the outside. Okay, so if I do everything on the outside, I really get negative 2 minus 2 times 4. So I'm going to do everything inside the parenthesis. So it's negative 2 minus 8, because actually you do inside here, you do the multiplication. And that gives you what? 2 plus 8 is 10, but the sign of the bigger number is negative, so it's negative 10. So this part right here that I just boxed, that's negative 10. So it's negative of negative 10, and so that's equal to positive 10. That's your answer. Okay? These take practice. You got to do the homework. You got to practice it to be successful with this. Okay? All right, so let's talk about absolute value now. You guys remember what absolute value is? Basically, these are the absolute value bars, and if you take the absolute value like of a negative 3, it just makes it positive. So if I take the absolute value of a positive 3, it doesn't make a negative, it just makes it positive again. Technically, the definition is distance to 0, and distance is always positive. Okay? So if I did, instead of this guy right here, I did just switched around a little bit. What if I did negative of absolute value of 3? Well, what's really that negative is not inside the absolute value. So what's the absolute value of 3? It's 3, and then you put a negative in front of it. So that's the answer for that one. If I did negative of the absolute value of negative 3, always do the stuff inside the absolute value. Absolute value is kind of like, really, it's like parentheses. You do everything inside the parentheses and then the stuff outside of it. So the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Okay? And then that negative is still there. So the answer is negative 3. Okay? So again, you treat the absolute value like parentheses. So basically what you want to do is you want to simplify. So this is important. Simplify absolute value first. I should say simplify inside absolute value first. Okay? That's really important. So it's just like parentheses. You want to do everything inside the parentheses first. So in this case, you're going to simplify everything inside the absolute value. Then take the absolute value. Then do outside operations. Okay, so let's do a couple examples here. A little more complicated. So 2 minus absolute value of 4 minus 7. So remember, simplify inside the absolute value first. Okay, that's important. Simplify inside the absolute value. So basically you have 4 minus 7. All right, so it's 2 minus, and what's 4 minus 7? 4 minus 7 is negative 3. It's 7 minus 4 is 3. The sign of the bigger number is negative, so it's negative 3. All right, now take the absolute value. So it's 2 minus, and the absolute value of negative 3 is just 3. So that's what you get. Then do outside operations. So now it's 2 minus 3. So my answer for this one is negative 1. Okay? It's not too bad. Let's do one where you have to substitute something in. So negative 2 absolute value of x minus 4. And I'm telling you x equals negative 1. So we just substitute that in there. And so it's negative 2 absolute value, and then it's negative 1 minus 4. Okay, what do? You do everything inside the absolute value first. So negative 2, negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5, because you add them together and you use the sign of the bigger number, which is negative. Okay, now I take the absolute value, so negative 2 times 5, and then I do outside operations. So negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. Okay, not bad. I do absolute value of negative 8 minus absolute value of 2 versus, I just want to compare these two, versus absolute value of negative 8 minus 2. So what is the difference between these two? All right. Well, I mean, if you look at it, do you guys agree that this one has got absolute value around the whole thing, right? This one is absolute value around each individual one, and then you still do the minus on the outside. So really, this blue minus sign right there, that is not inside the absolute value. So I'm going to do, for the first one on the left, I'm going to actually take the absolute value of 8 and 2. So if I take the absolute value of 8 and 2, I get absolute value of 8 is just 8. Okay, and then minus, and the absolute value of 2 is 2. So 8 minus 2 is 6. That's your answer. This one, I don't take the absolute value of negative 8 and negative 2. I do everything inside the absolute value first. So inside the absolute value is negative 8 minus 2 is basically negative 10. Remember, you add them together and you assign the bigger number. And then I still have my absolute value. I haven't done that yet. And what's the absolute value of negative 10? Well, it's 10. So that's my answer. So you get a completely different answer than, on the left side versus the right side. Okay? All right, so that's a little bit about absolute value. All right, so let's do a couple more things here. If I want to write as an algebraic expression. So basically what you're doing here is you're going English to math. Yay. So words that are in English, you're changing it into numbers and symbols that are math. That's basically what you're doing here. Okay, a couple things to recognize here. If you see the word sum, that means add. If you see the word difference, that means subtract. Okay? So keep that in mind. So we're going to do 3 examples here. Let me clear this out of here. We're going to do 3 examples. The first one is, again, I'm going to give you it in English, and you're going to translate it to math. It's really not difficult. Okay, so if I said the absolute value of the difference of 2 numbers. Okay, the absolute value of the difference of 2 numbers. So think logically, guys. The absolute value and the difference of 2 numbers. Those, I can make that up. I'm going to say it's x and y. Those are my 2 numbers. So I'm taking the absolute value of that difference, and difference means subtract. So basically this is what it is. That's my answer. Absolute value of the difference of 2 numbers. There it is. Difference of 2 numbers, and you got the absolute value brackets. Done. Okay, now that's different than this example when I say the difference of the absolute value of 2 numbers. So think about that. The difference of the absolute value of 2 numbers. So this one kind of said the absolute value, let me highlight this, I'll do it in green. This one said, I'm doing the absolute value of the difference. So it's the absolute value of this difference. This one, I'm saying the difference of the absolute value of 2 numbers. The absolute value of 2 numbers is literally going to be, this is the difference of 2 numbers. So the absolute value of 2 numbers and then the difference. That's the difference right here. So that is my answer. So I'm going to put a little bolder here. It looks like this. Absolute value of x minus absolute value of y. It's the difference, so the difference right here, of the absolute value of 2 numbers. Okay? That makes sense, guys? I hope. All right, so that's the difference in the wording. Like I said, the first one encompasses both of them together, and the second one is each individual one separately. Okay? All right, so, and I got one more example here for absolute value. If I said the absolute value of the difference of two numbers is greater than 8. Okay, so just like that, this is like the first example you have in your notes, the absolute value of the difference of numbers. This is saying the same thing, the absolute value of the difference of two numbers. So man, we're doing this exact same thing. The absolute value of the difference of two numbers is greater. So what is this is greater? So do you guys recognize that's a greater than symbol, right? If it said it's less than, it would be this way. Is greater than 8. What? That's it? Yeah, that's it. So this guy right here is your answer. Absolute value of the difference of two numbers is greater than 8. Okay? So just some examples here. Okay, I got one more thing to show you guys. This is pretty fast. This is just kind of part of tonight's homework. It's simplifying fractions. Okay? So let me write that out here. It's simplifying fractions. You guys, if I give you something like 2/8, you know it's, I can simplify 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 8 4 times. So 2/8 is 1/4. Okay, you can even use your calculator to do that. If you typed in 2/8 and hit enter, it will actually give you 1/4. Okay, so try it in your calculator, and it does a nice job. Okay. So if I did something like this, if I put a variable with it, how does that change it? What happens to these x's here? Do you guys agree? You remember that from back in Algebra 1? The x's cancel. So the x's cancel, and then you do 2/8, which is 1/4. So 2x over 8x is still 1/4. Okay, so remember the x's cancel. So if I did 15xy over 25xz. So again, you can put 15 over 25. You can't put variables in your calculator, but 15 over 25, and you hit enter, it would reduce to 3/5. Or you could say, hey, 5 goes into 15 3 times, 5 goes into 25 5 times. So we got 3/5. Now let's look at the variables. What happens to the x's? Well, they cancel. That's sweet. Cool. So they're gone. And what happens to the y? Nothing to cancel with it. So it stays there. And what happens to the z? It stays there as well. So this is your answer, reduced. Okay. So again, I can do this in my calculator. And this I have to do with knowledge of how to deal with variables. Okay. So that should get you through day 2 homework. It really isn't that bad. And you should be good to go. All right, my fans, that's it. Have an outstanding day. Adios.